You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong.
Welcome to episode 198 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm your host this week, Jessica Szilagyi. Your normal host, Dave Roberts, is enjoying the sandy beaches of Mexico with his lovely wife and better half, Connie, while the rest of us hold down the fort, work, due to the normal things that, regular people who aren't Dr. Cool do. But in the interest of not forcing all of our wonderful listeners to listen to my voice for an entire hour, and with the expectation that 2021 will finally come to an end in just a few short weeks, we decided it would be fun if we took a little trip down memory lane and reflected on some of the stupidest, yes, that's a word, stories from this year's dumpster fire. So without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have State Representative Sandra Scott, who filed some really terrible legislation. I know. You're wondering right now, which time?
Faithful State Rep Sandra Scott has a bill to allow families of people who are killed in officer-involved shootings to take action against the county coroner if they mischaracterize the cause of death. You would think after 2 years or 3 years of doing this, I could talk.
Sandra. She's the one that did the smoking in cars with kids. Bill, she wanted to make it a crime to smoke in the car with your kids. She's all over the map. She's done feminine product education mandates. So this one is just par for the course. I can't wait for the coroners to rise up against this one. We've talked about officer-involved shootings. If whether it's justified or not, it's listed as a homicide because somebody else is responsible for the death of whoever died. That's what a homicide is. It doesn't mean there's a crime. It just means it happened.
Right. And a coroner is not an ME.
No, and a coroner should not be the person who is determining anything other than this was self-inflicted or this came from somebody else. Like they should not be characterizing death reports or in like.
And even that comes from a medical examiner. A coroner takes a body and ships it off to the GBI. Right. If it hits a certain criteria, you die out of nowhere and you're in your mid 40s. You're not known to have cancer, not known to have heart disease. They go ahead and send the body off to the GBI lab. GBI comes back and says what caused it, specifically what caused it. And then at that point they go, okay, well, it was most likely caused by somebody else. Or the GBI lab comes back and says, consistent with self-inflicted gunshot wound. There's a gun laying at the floor, his point blank to the temple. His fingerprints are on it. Okay, it's self-inflicted. That's it. It's not up to the coroner to decide anything other than it was homicide, natural causes, suicide, accident. That's it. So I don't even know what this is referring to. I don't know what this solves. This is just, she's a bit of a Karen. We're getting off. I'm sorry, I get off on a hog trail. We don't have a whole lot of time, but this is just stupid. She's stupid. She
just wants to say she did something though.
Right. Look what I'm doing for you.
And for God's sakes, it's already ridiculous that our coroners are partisan and have to declare that they're Republican or Democrat. Like, don't drag them into something that is so over the top partisan.
And then there was that time that Congresswoman Nikema Williams showed her, ass like 1 week after being elected in a special election.
So then there's Congresswoman Nikema Williams, who introduced a resolution to ban now former President Trump from the U.S. Capitol in perpetuity.
Okay, I'll run with this one. Nikema Williams, she's the Georgia Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party of Georgia chairwoman, and then she's the one that she was a state senator, and she won the special election to replace John Lewis in Georgia's 5th district. So she's been there for, I don't know, like 45 days or something, and not even. And she introduced a resolution to make it so that Trump could never return to the U.S. Capitol because he was a threat to our democracy and because of, his whole inciting violence and everything. And I found it extremely entertaining because, in my opinion, no entity or body is more dangerous to our constitutional republic than the body that is Congress. And also, how often do we hear about past presidents just hanging out at the Capitol? I mean, unless there's some crazy, important ceremonial thing going on, it's not like they're just hanging out in the gallery.
Funerals. Then,
okay, well, I'm not sure Trump would go to any of them, quite honestly.
I don't know. I mean, it all depends, but funerals.
But that's it. He's not going to be hanging out at the Capitol. Like, it's theatrics.
Sure it is, and she's pandering. And she can't point to a single racist policy Trump enacted. She can't point to a single time he incited anything. Because there's evidence to the contrary on both counts. It's pandering. It's also in a misguided attempt to keep him from running for office again. Because if he were banned from the U.S. Capitol, if he were to be reelected in 2024, he could not give the State of the Union from the House floor. It's not going to pass. Even the Democrats are like, this is stupid.
It is stupid, but it's just, she's not going to be there that long. And this is her claim to fame. Cool.
Yeah, this is it. This is her attempt to go back to her constituents and say, I stood up.
And then there was that time that Dave lost his cool in the story about the war between David Ralston and David Clark and the weekly swabbing at the Capitol when they returned this year. Yeah, about that.
Okay, Ralston can kiss our collective.
Well, hold on. We're all about the individual here. Let's not get all collective here.
He's going to choke back tears. This is the same guy that allows accused child molesters to walk free because he keeps them out of court.
100%.
So save that crap. I've been to too many funerals. Shut up. Well, it could be that you're older than dirt and the people around you are dropping like flies. It also could be that you have a geographically large district and everybody wants the speaker to come to their funeral. So shut up. Don't give me that. Don't try to take moral high ground. Anybody who knows you knows what you are. So don't. If you want to say he violated house rules that we've established to keep everybody safe and leave it at that, fine. But this emotional crap that somehow he's morally superior because he's going to let someone stick a swab up his nose twice a week. As far as I'm concerned, they can go with the new Chinese version twice a week, which is an anal swab.
Oh.
You hadn't heard about that one, huh?
Oh, I have. I just, appreciate you sharing.
Because no, that would be great. That'd be perfect for the lawmakers. Go ahead and bend over and.
Okay. Whoa. It's way too close to the holidays to be talking like that. So, remember the time that our lawmakers proposed making it easier for law enforcement to obtain our digital records? And of course, they said it was for the children and for safety.
Last week in the Georgia legislature.
I hate them. I hate them so much.
But you miss them when they're not in session.
No, I don't. I don't.
So moving along through the process of HB 127, this bill establishes a provision which law enforcement agencies could request that wireless service providers turn over location information for a device on a particular user.
Okay, so were you on the show a few years ago? I think it was 2018 or maybe it was 2019. The legislature proposed a bill. No, I don't think, actually, it might have been before that, because I think Josh McCoon did it with Renee Unterman. But anyway, there was a provision that allows the GBI to request our data from our cell phone providers with a subpoena. So, I mean, for various reasons. But then there's a protection clause in there that says, like, if I call Verizon and say, hey, did you give my information to the GBI? They are barred from confirming one way or the other.
Okay.
So this is building on that code section, because you know how they do. They do the whole, well, this is already in, this why any bad legislation is not just bad, it's absolutely awful, because when they come back around to expand it or broaden or do whatever they are going to do, they say, well, this is already on the books, so we're just adding to it, or this is already a provision they have, and so we just want to give our folks a little more flexibility. That's what they say in committees. So this is them giving law enforcement a little more flexibility.
A little more flexibility, huh?
Yeah, so the provider wouldn't even be able to say no, which is crap, because, I mean, we've talked about how Apple and who else? Somebody else did something where they refused to provide, encrypted data and things like that. But anyway, the provider would have no say in it, and they just have a nice little clause in there that says law enforcement shall not request information except in the event of an emergency situation that involves the risk of death or serious harm, which, I mean, that's pretty darn broad.
It is. Oh, man.
A risk of death or harm. It's anything.
So the situation that we all have in mind is something like 24. We're on the clock. Millions of people are going to die. We've got to find where this guy is. Isn't this already accessible with a warrant?
I guess what they're trying to, I think what they're trying to circumvent is time.
Yeah. The only thing I can imagine is kid's been kidnapped or something like that. When we get an Amber Alert, is be able to pull the phone number up of almost always the parent that took off with the kid, parent who's not supposed to have the kid taking off with him. Or something like the Tsarnaev brothers, however you pronounce their name, in Boston, the marathon bombers. But the time is there to protect us. So, to protect the individual. So yeah, all this information is available by warrant. You can subpoena bank records. You can subpoena phone records. You can subpoena all that stuff. But there's a burden of proof before a judge is going to sign off on it. At least we hope there is.
A burden of proof?
And then there was the time that the Georgia legislature hypocritically pretended like it wanted to change the citizen's arrest law in the state.
Business owners and restaurant owners who properly detain individuals so they can't be sued for false arrest or false imprisonment or things of the sort. Yet, everyone's calling. Here is your reason why Democrats, Republicans do it too, but on this type of stuff, Democrats are hypocritical monsters. They want the repeal of qualified immunity and sovereign immunity for elected officials and government entities because they don't want things like false arrest and false imprisonment to just go unannounced or unaccounted for. Yet here, they are willing to grant individuals civil immunity from being sued or held accountable for freaking detaining people on a probable cause belief that some random, quote, untrained person, but based on what they think.
I know you all remember this one. It was the time we learned that you can have junk in the trunk, but you just can't talk about it.
Georgia representatives were told Monday that sexual comments won't be tolerated after a legislator spoke on the House floor last week about a female rapper's plastic surgery.
There's so much wrong with this.
You think?
This was Casey Carpenter, a Dalton Republican. And so there was a bill about who can administer sedation at outpatient clinics and for different service or procedures and stuff. And when the bill sponsor was presenting, Representative Carpenter rose, pushed his button. He had a question. The speaker recognized him, and he said, "Is it not true that this bill will provide safety measures to ensure that Cardi B's backside implants will be safe and ensure a lifetime of effectiveness?"
Okay. First of all, I had to look up who Cardi B is when I saw the story.
I'm sure that half that chamber was like, who?
Well, first of all, it's a joke. It's not funny. But
It's not funny.
no, I mean, he must be a charming, charming dude because he's not funny. But it was a joke. But sexual harassment?
Well, and I think that's pretty much what he said. He said it was probably here's the other thing. So some of the female lawmakers went to him and were like, that was not cool. We didn't like that. We felt that was inappropriate. And he apologized. And then he apologized the next day from the well during the morning orders and everything. And then they held a press conference about it and blasted him and filed formal complaints. Like, he already apologized and they accepted his apology, and then they're just blistering him in the media. So it's like, why would anybody apologize if you're just going to do that anyway? And the comments that they're saying make it sound like he just like made their ears bleed. Like, one of the women, I think Representative Hutchinson said, "How many apologies do we have to have before we're given a basic level of respect? I never thought after I was elected by my constituents that I would be here asking for safety in the workplace." Like,
Safety.
please pardon me. First of all, if someone talked about my ass in the Capitol, I'm not going to fear for my safety. Let alone a rapper that most people don't even know, and specifically her implants.
This story isn't really stupid. Of course, like, the villain in the story is stupid, like a lot of the others, but it's just plain funny. I'll give you a hint. There's something on it. I don't know what it is, but it smells funny. Stop it.
So I've got a guy in Peachtree City quit his job in November, was trying to get his last paycheck, and his boss was really hurt by him leaving or angry about him leaving. And he just wanted to get his last $900 and change check. So he went after the boss. I think he ended up going to Department of Labor. So the boss drops nearly $1,000 worth of pennies on his driveway, of 500 pounds of pennies, and covered them in oil and drops them in his driveway as his payment for his last check. I mean, that's a level of pettiness that
I hope to achieve.
I wouldn't know where to find 500 pounds worth of pennies. But it says he's got a wheelbarrow full of them, and the wheelbarrow's wheels are breaking and stuff.
I want to know how the news found out.
I assume he called somebody.
What? I mean, if somebody called me and was like, yeah, I need you to come meet me about this story. I've got a wheelbarrow full of pennies. I would be like, no, boss.
I can't. You wouldn't be attracted to 500 pounds of oily pennies.
No, and like, what do you say? I mean, this poor man. Like, are you supposed to make him the victim? Contract goes south. I just don't. I don't know.
I love this quote from the guy's girlfriend. They're covered in something. Don't know what it is, but it smells funny. such hard-hitting journalism from CBS 46.
Well, they're not really. Well, I'll refrain. But now, we'd be remiss if we left out something about the IRS on our list of stupidest stories of the year because, well, it's the IRS and taxation is theft. I'm sure you saw where they're extending the IRS deadline.
No, did they?
Well, they're supposed to. They're expected to extend it by 30 days because the IRS is inundated with the clerical matters of dispersing stimulus payments, I guess. So they're going to extend it to May.
So we're too busy bribing you to steal from you.
Right. Or we want to make sure you have money to pay us. I guess. I hate them. Loser, 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 loser. No,
Da-dun.
no, that's not
Da-dun.
the sound I made.
Da-dun.
No.
That's not the sound you made in your head when you typed it out?
No, you try it again.
Well, sing to us,
First
Jess.
of all, you said "dunna," which is not enough words.
Oh, you're like Jiminy Cricket in my headset. You know that?
Dunna,
So Vernon Jones' big news announcement. Oh, okay. Yeah. That would be Sports Center. Vernon Jones' big news announcement Friday. Governor. New York Times reported Thursday night he joins Appling County educator Candace Taylor in the Republican primary to unseat.
I can't think of a worse person to run for any office anywhere other than perhaps Savannah Mayor Van Johnson or Park Cannon. Well, I could probably think of a lot of terrible people, but I don't know what Vernon Jones is doing. The guy has a record a mile long.
And not a great record. Okay. So Vernon came up through, and he's an educated guy. He went to school in North Carolina. Worked for MCI Communications. Worked for Bell South in the corporate world. Then in, I think, 2000, 2001, he becomes the DeKalb County CEO.
Which is the most messed up position in our state anyway, other than maybe like public service commissioner or something. But
yeah, so he's surrounded in scandals.
A bunch of people while he was elected went to prison.
Yeah, all around him. And you know, he steps out like, you know, a phoenix out of the flames. Even in that limited role, I think he was smacked with like $7,500 in ethics fines for taking too many donations or too high a donation from certain members, from certain people, which he had to, under the agreement, return the excess contribution and obviously pay a $7,500 fine, which is a huge ethics fine.
Yeah, it's usually like $125.
Right. So this was not a one of the I forgot to file something.
But did he pay it?
I don't know. Did he pay it?
I don't think so because he owes like $25,000.
Yeah, outstanding. So we've got the ethics violations there. We've got, I guess, in 2017, he runs for state. During this time, he runs for state senate, fails. Runs for something else, I think, fails, and finally wins a House seat.
He ran for sheriff.
He ran for sheriff of DeKalb County, and there's nothing in his bio that tells me he's post qualified.
He's a modern libertarian conservative.
Okay, that's from this Wikipedia page. Modern libertarian conservative. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means. I mean, individually, I know what each one of those words means, but together, I'm not sure what they mean. He's got a really spotty record with this stuff. And look, everything I hear about Jones is people like him. And it's very, very common. Obviously, that's how you get into politics, is you're likable and people like you. I was talking to some state reps the other day. We were talking about Vernon. Like they said he's just a different cat, man. He's a pro-gun Democrat. This is obviously before he decided to jump ship. Pro-gun Democrat, walks in the house in a cowboy hat and cowboy boots and stuff like that. And he's well liked down there, but he wasn't liked enough to show up to vote. He missed 100 votes. I think is the number you gave me.
In 1 year.
In 1 year, 100 votes.
In 40 days, he missed 100 votes.
That's
impressive.
One session. And these are votes where these are unexcused votes for the most part. And we've talked about it on the show before.
Votes. Yeah, it was 100 votes where he was present but didn't cast a vote. Like he wasn't absent. He just didn't vote.
Yeah, and look, there's a certain amount of fluff with stuff that happens. They'll get a vote on some resolution to name a state building or something stupid, stuff that they vote on, and some reps will, or if they're in a meeting with constituents or whatever, will miss that vote because it's just not that big of a deal. But 25% is a big number.
Well, you're also supposed to put an E up and be excused so people know you're not on the floor.
That's true too.
So you don't end up like Bill Werkheiser and have someone voting for you when you're not there.
Well, he immediately played victim when this was brought up. It may have been to you. You may have called him out on. But he was talking about it was either his mother. I think it was his mother was in the hospital and she was dying. I guess he got a phone call and left immediately. Again,
okay, pump the brakes. She wasn't dying. Don't make it sound like I was going after him when his mama was dying in the hospital. That's not what happened. She was ill, and he was like running back and forth between the hospital and that was only on the last day. That wasn't all 100 votes. It was like, I don't know, 30 of them. And all he had to do was put an E up. He's just lazy, but he kept coming back. Like he'd vote a little and then he'd leave for a little while. Like he just wanted to give the impression that he was in two places at one time.
Well, that's the thing is, look, if I'm your boss, and you come to me and say, Dave, I need to go. My mom's really sick in the hospital. Can I take the day off? Even Ralston has some human emotions. Be like, look, Mr. Speaker, my mother's very sick. I need to run to the hospital. He said, you're excused. That's all you have to do. It's the same courtesy that you would give any boss. You don't. If you're a checkout clerk at Publix and you hear that you need to run to visit your mom in the hospital, you don't just leave with your drawer open and split. You say, okay, and then you go tell your boss, look, I've got to go. And then you do whatever you need to do to the proper process of leaving.
Well, you can leave your drawer open and split, but you're not going to have a job to come back to. And Vernon did.
Right.
I met him when I lived in Atlanta. I think we've talked about that on the show.
We have.
Yeah.
Nice yoga pants.
Yeah, we didn't have a very good interaction. We met at the gym, for anybody who's new.
Yeah, I meant to harass you a little bit when we brought the story in and mention your yoga pants, but
yeah,
it's important to note I cannot see Jessica.
Yeah, but he's just trash. I mean, he's a trash ethically. He's trash in his character and the issues with his residency. I mean, he was dishonest about where he was living, and then he changed political parties right before the decision about his residency was going to be ordered by the Ethics Commission, like a couple of days before, and nobody even like blinked an eye because they're like, oh my God, this black Democrat is supporting Donald Trump.
Right. And here's the thing. We talk about his residence, and we've talked about it on the show before. Apparently, in between, or at some point after his first election to the House in 2017, whatever it was, he moved. And then when he ran for re-election, he used his old address to stay in district because he knew that he could win.
Otherwise, he would have had to go up against a colleague.
Right. So we already have that. We already have that was coming out before he magnanimously decided that he was not going to run for re-election because he just didn't agree with the party. Yeah, he was already busted for not living where he said he was living. That's a fairly big deal.
And
Unless
instead of taking
unless you run for
it,
Congress, Lucy McBath, then you can live where the hell you want, apparently.
But instead of taking the heat for it, he just came out for Donald Trump.
Right. And look, he may very well agree with Donald Trump. He's quoted as saying that he supported W. He supported Obama, and then he supported Trump.
Okay. No libertarian has ever voted for Barack Obama.
This is probably true. So this is all window dressing with, and I really thought he wanted a job on Fox News, and he probably could have had it. And his interviews are great. I mean, and I'm talking about from a stylistic standpoint, the way he set his office up to do these sort of Zoom interviews on cable news. He's got the American flag to one side, the Georgia flag to the other. He's got all the stuff behind him. It's set up. I mean, it portrays the perfect image of exactly what he wanted to portray, and it was done very, very well. And from a PR standpoint, I'm pretty impressed with it. But you can't ignore his past. This is not ancient history. This is not when he was 30 years old. This is not, young Vernon running the streets at 20. He's 60 now, I believe. So even the stuff as DeKalb County CEO, he was in his 40s. This is not a kid. This is not youthful indiscretion.
Well, and what is his obsession with being elected? Like he ran and was a House rep in 1992 until 2001. Then he was the CEO. Then he did all his little time in county office. Then he ran for United States Senate. Then he ran for U.S. Congress. Then he ran for sheriff. Then he ran back to the House. And now he wants to be governor. He has spent the last 30 years running for office.
Heaven help us if he wins. Seriously, some of you people are so mad at Kemp. But if you think Kemp is bad, multiply that by 200 million and you'll get Stacey Abrams, because that is what Vernon Jones will deliver us. Governor Stacey Abrams. For God's sakes, don't vote for Vernon Jones. All right. Now, a little bit more
the dumbest you will hear all week.
Few stories are as deserving as this one for a once-over once again. This one comes from the thriving metropolis of the city of LaGrange in West Georgia, where the police chief instituted a policy about shooting them in the leg.
So speaking of jackasses, we have the LaGrange Police Department in West Georgia has implemented a new training protocol in which the agency is teaching officers to shoot to incapacitate by aiming for the pelvic region, the arms, or the legs.
Yeah. The AJC did a feature piece on this because the chief, Lou Dekmar, he, I guess, had them down to watch their training exercises because they're the first and only agency in the country doing this, because, as we're going to talk about, it's stupid, doesn't work, and is reckless, and it's going to open them up to all kinds of lawsuits from both his officers and the public. But yeah, he invited them down. They did this big feature because, every time we have an officer involved shooting, whether it's justified or not, the conversation is, well, why do they have to kill him? Why didn't they just shoot him in the leg and blah, blah, blah. So this guy, I guess, is just, after 30 or 40 years in law enforcement, he's going to revolutionize it and tell people to shoot people in the arm, because when someone's running toward you with a gun, you can shoot them in the knee.
Okay, I know I am super male. And Eric, I'm sorry. His policy, shoot him in the... Doesn't that sound much worse than center mass?
I guess it depends on what they did.
And how much you dislike them.
are we talking about future arrests or arrests that have happened, I don't know, in the last month and a half or so? I mean, what are we...
Shots fired, so to speak.
Ha. Anyway.
Which I've been threatened with in this house many times. But look, there are major blood vessels in the pelvic region. And not to make light of this, and, you know, I'm jocular, but there's a lot of damage. So do you really want to give somebody a hysterectomy at 1,400 feet per second?
Well, what happens when you know, I mean, I can see the headlines now when an officer testifies that because someone died and he said, well, I wasn't trying to use deadly force. I was just trying to shoot him in the arm, but, you know, they were running towards me and I missed. And so I shot him in the chest. Like, it's called deadly force because it results in it most often and can very likely result in death. It's the final step to end the encounter. I don't understand why.
Or I shot the bystander because I was trying to hit his arm, which is 4 inches wide instead of his chest. That's 14 inches wide. There's a reason.
Wide? What is he?
The arm?
Gumby? I mean,
how wide is your arm?
You said he. I'm not a he.
I mean, my arm, if I'm running at you, is not more than 4 or 6 inches wide, and I'm fat. And I've got big arms. I'm not talking about standing like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Pumping Iron. But you shoot for center mass because it gives you the most amount of leeway. And look, I've been shooting with police officers, and I'm sorry to the cops that listen, but some of y'all aren't the best shots. Okay, what's the test? 70%, which means 3 out of 10 go somewhere you're not intending. You aim for center. We see it in stories all the time. Officers fired 15 times, hit them 5 times. It's a moving target. It's asinine. If less than lethal force is justified, you use less than lethal. You get your taser out, you get your pepper spray out, you get that stupid rope thing that shoots out of a gun and wraps you around the legs or whatever the hell it is.
Well, the chief is the one, he said in the article, in his statement, one of his official statements about it, he said, using deadly force when it doesn't result in death helps, quote, earn trust and maintain confidence of the public. I mean,
said nobody in a wheelchair ever.
You're not going to earn my trust by shooting someone in the arm. Maybe if you shot the gun out of their hand, I could be like, wow, that was pretty good.
Which is really impressive when you see it on Bonanza, but it's or a sniper shot where he has time to rest and take a really good shot from a distance. But at the point, and here's the thing, you know, I carry a gun if my pants are on and gun's on. If I have to use it, it's to stop the threat. My goal isn't to kill anyone. I don't want to take a human life. It's one of the worst things for the person who pulls the trigger is to take a human life. You aim center mass because it stops the threat and saves your life or the life of others.
Well, and shooting someone in the leg, or, I mean, that's not necessarily going to, if they have a gun, that's not going to stop the threat.
Not just that, there's something called the femoral artery. You can bleed out, I was about to say in a heartbeat, quite literally in a heartbeat. You hit somebody in the femoral artery? Oh, yeah. They're going to die, and it's going to hurt the entire time it's happening. Same thing with a gut shot. You can very easily take one to the liver in a gut shot. And then you want to talk about the pelvic region. That whole area is full of nerves, not just the fun ones, full of nerves and blood vessels that don't react well to things moving at 1,000 feet plus per minute.
Okay,
so
sorry. If you were, you know, in a skirmish with the cops, and you had to be shot, where would you want to be shot?
In the gluteus, I guess, because I would be running away. You hit me right in the brain. No, I don't want to be shot at all.
That's not the question.
But I guess in the ass. That's the fleshy part that can. Well, I don't have much of one. I look like Hank Hill. But the chest has lungs, heart, and all the important arteries. You've got the spine, the nerves, the leg. I don't want to be shot at all, which is why I do things like pay an attorney if I were to need one. Like, Mr. Roberts, you're under arrest. Okay. Could I call an attorney now? But the fact is, we use center mass because it allows the maximum amount of error while still striking the target. And you said it in the opening before I started, cracking jokes, is there are going to be tons of lawsuits on this one. Did you violate city policy by aiming center mass? Why didn't you aim at his pecker?
You're setting unreasonable expectations for the community because you're purporting that it's just super easy to do it this way, and that all the way that has been done. And I mean, you kind of touched on it, but I just want to be clear. Like, the way that their police are taught is the same way citizens are taught. Anyone who is taught how to shoot a gun and it's towards a target that is shaped like a human being is taught the same way. And we're supposed to pretend like all of a sudden after all these hundreds of years that's wrong. I mean,
it's just stupid. And what's going to happen is he's going to lose police officers.
Hopefully.
Because they're going to say, forget this. I'm out.
My understanding is that some of his police officers were at training last week and this came up, and because this story had just come out and they were already defending it. So if they're that dumb, then they deserve to be sued as well. And I will hope that they don't have the PBA or the FOP to help them, because this is just stupid all around. Like, reasonable officers would walk off the job if someone said you can't shoot them in the way that you've been trained to shoot them. You can't protect yourself to stop the threat.
Now, we are kind of running low on time, so I don't want to leave the show without this one being plugged in. There was that time when they marched to the sea from Sylvania to Savannah, carrying dirt in the rain with an RV, and we still don't even know why.
Ushering dirt to the U.S. Attorney's Office is new, sitting at the back of the bus. In rural Screven County last week, the son of late Julian Lewis, along with civil rights activists, announced a 60-plus mile march for justice in Lewis's honor.
Yeah, this is the same story we talked about with the trooper when we talked about the grand jury indictment and everything, or lack of indictment, grand jury shopping. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the show. But I guess the reason that, he was the case was presented to a grand jury at the end of June of this year, and we're still hearing about it. And there's the family of the man who was killed. Just they won't let it go because they're planning on filing a wrongful death suit against the state of Georgia. And, now they're accusing the grand jury of being a runaway grand jury, and they failed to indict Jake Thompson, and just it's constant. Like, they're not getting a whole lot of mainstream coverage. Like, our local TV stations, of course, give them a microphone for some odd reason, but they're really on more like tradition or alternative outlets, like doing podcasts like out of state and things like that. But now the whole point of this march, they're doing a 60-mile march over 5 days. It started last Thursday from Sylvania in Screven County to Savannah to get the attention of the U.S. Attorney's Office, because they want the U.S. Attorney to investigate the runaway grand jury, quote, how they were picked and how they ended up not indicting. And then they want like civil rights violations, that whole process.
Well, Sherman would be proud.
Yeah.
On their march to the sea.
Yeah.
I think the symbolism of that, it may be lost on them. I don't know. Hopefully they don't go burning crops.
Well, they actually hired security, supposedly, or they said they did. They said they did on a podcast that they were going to hire security because, I guess they're afraid that people are going to harass them. And, I don't know what's in store for the weekend, but I can tell you that on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, most people are at work. They're only walking 12 miles a day.
Right. Look, the only reason I would harass them is if they block traffic.
And they're straight up walking out in the middle of the road. And one of the reporters was doing a little trot alongside of them in the rain with their ponchos on, all dramatic and everything. And she's like, nearly a dozen people walked with, Brooke Bacon, which is his son, in this call for justice and everything. And I counted 8. That's not almost a dozen. I'm glad she doesn't work at a bakery. But they just continue to hype this up. And now the thing that's frustrating to me, and I talked a little bit about it, on social media and stuff Thursday, I'm disgusted that they want the federal government to swoop in and override what the community decided. That's the entire premise of the grand jury and a jury, is to have your peers. And I don't like the local officials, but they're duly elected and they guided them through the process. And this is the end result. And now you want the federal government to come in and offer you a remedy and override all of that because you didn't get the outcome that you want. And you're claiming that it's racist and the system is oppressive. So you want to use the most oppressive and most racist entity that ever lived to come in and help you? It's disgusting.
They're more interested in the result than the fair process.
They don't care how they get it.
Right. And look, I lost my mind driving in the Keys because it's just a 2-lane road, and they gave a permit to a bike race. So it was 30 miles of 15 miles an hour.
That's brutal.
It is. Now think about getting stuck behind these yahoos.
Well, and they have a little RV behind them too. That's, I guess, so if you get tired, you can ride for a little while, and air conditioning and food and water and all that. But
we call it the meat wagon.
Well, okay, but that's if you were serious. I used to go door to door for campaigns, and nobody drove an RV behind me. I had to pull a wagon. I wore tennis shoes, and I pulled a wagon that had a cooler and snacks and all the stuff I needed. I didn't rely on somebody else to.
Well, when we went on ruck marches and stuff, there was a meat wagon that would, if you fell out, there was a medic in the meat wagon that would take you in, and of course you failed at the ruck march, but they would take you in and hydrate you and all that stuff. I don't really have a problem with that. Plus that provides a buffer from cars that are coming up behind them at 55 miles an hour, that they see this big object with flashers on.
Okay, well, don't ride in the road.
Really? Exactly what I'm saying. They want the imagery of walking down the road.
Yeah, they said it's the furthest march in state history for this type of thing.
Yeah. The Union troops would disagree. When they marched through Georgia liberating slaves. So I think they probably disagree on that one. They marched a little bit further and faster, carrying more. Yep. Man, I don't have a problem with the demonstration. If you feel strongly about something, I think he's trying to trade on his father's name. First of all, he should probably change his name to Julian Lewis Jr. or something, because Brooke with an E. I don't know.
Well, my thing though is that, do we want a justice system that operates on pressure? That's how this whole thing started, and why it's been such a cluster the entire time, because the arrest was made within a week of it all happening before the investigation was done. The entire the entire time, all of this is operated off of public pressure, and the grand jury is what was the roadblock to furthering it on. That's why they're mad, because they weren't getting, he didn't get bond initially because of public, they were worried about what the public was going to do, not what he was going to do. He got arrested because of the public pressure, like all these things. And now they want to continue on with that. And I don't want a justice system because I don't want the U.S. attorney to do something because they saw people marching in the street and walking, carrying dirt as a symbol. I think that's weird.
I have no problem with them blowing off steam. I'd like them to be out of my way, but if they want to go blow off steam, it's fine. Look, we talked about before the show a little about justice. Like, we all believe that Casey Anthony killed her baby. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't proven at trial, period. The prosecution was unable to deliver a convincing case to that jury. That's just the way it is. The justice is imperfect, but we have protections in place, and we have a system in place to protect the innocent, and that's just the way it is.
Well, and these attorneys they're defense attorneys in another case in my county, one county over, where they have a black client who killed a white girl. And if these types of things were happening in that case, they would be in front of they have a gag order now, but they would be losing their minds.
Right. And look, no, I do not want a justice department or a system of justice that bows to political pressure. That's what this is. The judicial branch is supposed to be separate, completely separate. And it is supposed to, justice is blind. Justice does not see if the victim is black or white. Justice does not see if the perpetrator is black or white. Justice is only supposed to weigh the evidence. And we forget that.
We don't.
Well, you and I do. As a society.
And just so I don't get in trouble, this is your reminder that any opinions that you heard on this show are ours and ours alone. They don't represent anyone else, anyone not on the show, any company, any friend of a friend, just us, just me, just Dave. That's it. Also, just because something didn't make the list doesn't mean it wasn't one of our stupidest stories of the year. It just means, it can't replay the entire 50 episodes from earlier this year. I hope you enjoyed taking a trip down memory lane as much as I did. If you like what you heard, make sure you let Dave know because, well, duh. As always, thank you to Eric Cumby for all he does to make this show great. And thank you to our listeners. I'm Jessica Salachi.